Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now typically for me an EDC flashlight is in the 18650 to 21700 battery size range, but today we're going to take a look at a slightly smaller form factor with the Thrunite Saber. Now here I have two different variants, one in neutral white, one in cool white. We're going to take a look at these in a side-by-side comparison to help you make that decision. Do you like the cool white? Do you like the neutral white? Well, typically that's kind of a personal preference, but the nice thing is Thrunite offers both of those, and in this case with the Saber. So again, we'll go through these in detail. I'll give you some beam shots. We'll take a look at the overall construction and quality. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Thrunite who did provide these for review. And so as we get into this Saber, sometimes as a reviewer, what happens is you can't always tell exactly where you stand, but you have a pretty good idea on things. And well, today I'm battling in my mind, is the Saber going to be sized more like this Olight M1T Raider or the Streamlight Macro Stream? Now, these are definitely a little bit different in terms of the size, but generally speaking, both about equivalent in diameter. And then here we have the Saber, and by the box, I'm like, well, that's probably, a little bit too long. And in this case, maybe just about right. So I'm kind of trying to think, where is this going to land? Now, I've seen some people already performing some reviews. I haven't really watched too much about this, but I know this is a light that's been getting some YouTube coverage lately. So for me, as I get into this, kind of a first look-in impression for the most part. And as we pull this out of the box. All right. So here, the Thrunite Saber, pretty close, maybe a little bit longer than the M1T. And then again, of course, it's going to be smaller than the Macro Stream. Of course, Streamlight does have the Micro Stream. I do not have that flashlight, which might have been maybe a little bit closer in terms of the size or diameter. But yeah, so here, the Saber, it's definitely going to be a thinner profile, but a little bit longer here than the Olight. Now again, as I mentioned, I do have a couple of different variants of this. One in the neutral white and one in the cool white. I'm going to kind of have to keep these a little bit straight. So this one here, this is the neutral white. So as I take a look at it here, the neutral white. And then this one here is going to be the cool white. Usually when I do a video covering two different LED temperatures, I like to have a different body color on the flashlight so we can keep them straight. But unfortunately today, that is not exactly going to be the case, so I will have to mark these. Which for today's demonstration, my cool white is going to have a white dot on the cap, so that will take care of that. And so while that dries and we take a look at the rest of this, again, the Thrunite Saber, here you can see, pretty straightforward in the packaging. Down in the corner, that is what indicates either cool white or neutral white. So if you're going to make a purchase, just make sure you're paying attention to that. Of course, I have the user's manual and guide. Very simple packaging, and then your USB Type-C charging cable. The flashlight, of course, does come with the battery and all things Thrunite. Very nicely done. Here, the actual flashlight itself. Now again, fairly small form factor. Melts away into your hand, completely enveloped. Very small, slim package, which is nice, especially if you're looking for a low profile EDC. This for me is going to make a fantastic backup flashlight. I do have a primary flashlight, but I always want that extra little flashlight for a couple of reasons. First is, well, my first one runs out of batteries. Boom, I got this. Second is, I left my primary flashlight on my nightstand, which happens all the time. Boom, I got this. Or third, I go someplace and somebody needs it, which does happen all the time. Unthreading the cap here, you can see the battery on the inside. Let's take a quick look at the tail cap here, which that is firmly in place or does not come off at all. So unthreading the head here, dropping out the battery. You'll see this is the 14500 form factor, which is pretty much like a double A, 900 milliamp hour, 3.7 volt, which translates to 3.4 watt hours of power. As we take a look here, a USB Type-C rechargeable battery. So that's awesome. Let's see if there's a little bit of juice in here just to get things started, threading down the cap, and yes. So as you can see here, this is the neutral white, not the cool white. This is the neutral white. It's going to be a little bit warmer, just a little bit warmer than my studio lights, just by a bit, but pretty close overall in color temperature. I do expect the cool white will be cooler than my studio lights. So we should get a good contrast here. Now, in terms of the actuation, you can see a good quality tail clicky here. So there we go. And as I bump that, turn it on, and half pressing, that does not advance through the modes. So we're looking at a full click here from low to high. So 2 modes, low and high. Now, even though once you turn the light on, you can't necessarily change the modes, you do have the ability to momentary or half press. And at this point, you know, if I go low, half press, high, low, I can depress it the rest of the way, and that will take. So in other words, at this point, half press high, click it in. So you do have the ability to kind of momentary press, which for a light of this form factor, I do love. I'm going to say 90% of the time, I'm just going to kind of lean on it a little bit, get some light, go about my way, no problem. And then the question is, well, that was just the low mode. So if I sit here for a minute, half press, yep, comes back in the low. Sit here for a minute, this should time out, and at that point has that memory. So just minding my business, half press, low. Again, if you press quick enough, you're going to go back to that high mode. Getting on this, letting it time out. Quick little break. Half press. Okay, so it does stay in the low mode if you come back on it, which is, I actually personally prefer that. I think that's great. I like that. I like the fact that in order to get into the high mode, you're just going to kind of double click real quick. That's fine. And then most of the time, as long as you've given it enough time between the cycles, you're going to come on, and that's going to be low for your EDC tasks. And I can tell you that in my experience, I do find that the low mode, being 57 lumens, is more than enough for your typical tasks, navigation, general searching, no problem. So I actually like the programming quite a bit. Leveraging the Thrunite battery, the low mode. The low mode will be 57 lumens with 19 hours of runtime, turning it off and back on. The high mode will be 659 lumens, and that will go for about 170 seconds and then drop down to 276 lumens for about 100 minutes. Total throw 141 meters at the highest mode. That does translate to around 5,000 candela. This has the IPX8 waterproof rating, which does go down to about 2 meters and is impact resistant to about a 1.5 meter drop. Now keep in mind the fact that you can run a standard AA battery. If you do, your high mode will drop down to 235 lumens. That will run for 75 minutes, and your low mode will drop down to 24 lumens and give you 14 hours of runtime. Your performance will also drop off to a 90 meter maximum throw, which translates to around 2,040 candela in that high mode. So that is something to take into consideration. You do get more performance out of the lithium battery, and I'd be very curious to see if the performance specifications are exactly the same on both the neutral white and the cool white. But again, as you take a look at the general form factor, as always, Thrunite doing a fantastic job with their construction. A little bit of ribbing here, just a little bit of texture, a little bit of ribbing and texture on that tail cap, which again, I do not believe actually threads off. You'll notice that you have that sort of bezel up and bezel down clip. But what I like the most about it is I always like to leverage that thick part of the clip that does go over my pockets with ease, sits down nice and deep, and this is bezeled down in that configuration, which is how I always like my flashlights. I'm really not a big fan of bezel up designs. It just doesn't work for me. I tend to hit the button more. It tends to turn on and then I'm flashing all over the place. It's just a little bit nutty. And I also don't like the glass being exposed. So this does work very well for my needs. Taking a look at the glass, you'll notice a smooth reflector on the inside. And that's going to make this a decent throw overall, even given its small form factor. Now at this point, I do need to charge up the batteries for maximum performance and for the field use testing. So I'm going to get both of these charged up. Again, the cool white and the neutral white. And when we come back, we'll do some beam shots and I'll give you a color comparison of the LEDs. So now getting into some beam shots. Outside, we're going to take a look at my fence. On the left-hand side, this is going to be the neutral. So you can see the neutral on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, this is going to be the cool. Now I've set my camera for white balance so that it doesn't adjust, so you can see this clearly. Again, on the left-hand side, that is the neutral, and on the right-hand side, the cool. Now both these lights at this time are in the low mode. I'm going to basically double-click now. And with that double click, these are now in the high mode. Again, you can see the definite color temperature difference. Now, as I dive the lights down, you're going to see some of that spill. And this is in the eye of the beholder, depending on what you like. You can see this definitely has, in both cases, a hot centralized hotspot and then some flood off to the sides and above. But again, a vast difference in terms of the color. Now I can say that for the most part, both of these are very pleasing to the eye. It's not a huge lumen output, so in both cases, pretty nice. For me personally, on a smaller light, I do tend to like more of that neutral than the cool, but both are very nice. Beaming out into the yard now, first we're going to go with the neutral. So you can see the low mode. Low mode doing a nice job, general navigation, no problem, getting around. It illuminates up onto my deck, not a huge amount of light. I'm going to introduce at this point the cool, so on the right hand side, the cool. And let's take a look between them and see if you can actually make out any additional detail. So again, the neutral coming up onto the fence, and then the cool. So the cool, neutral. I think perception is you might see a little more detail in the cool, but again, I think that's perception more than anything else. Going into the high mode now. On the left hand side, again, that's the neutral. On the right hand side, the cool. Beaming off into the distance with the neutral. Definitely looks warmer. Coming up now with the cool. That cool light definitely, again, appears just a little more detailed, but it's hard to say. Neutral, very warm. Cool. Now again, both side by side. Neutral on the left, cool on the right. Up onto the deck with the neutral. Up onto the deck with the cool. You can see much more white in terms of the trim. You can see the trim there looking more white, whereas here has that yellowish glow. Easy on the eyes with the neutral. Very easy, even. Little more harsh with the cool, but both are very nice. Beaming off into the distance, up into the trees, illuminating out in the high mode, doing a pretty nice job with the cool. And then back up. That's the neutral. Cool. And neutral. Either way you go, very nicely done with the Saber. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A look at the Thrunite Saber. A very simple, just really easy, low profile EDC light. Always great quality. I definitely like this light. The programming, straightforward, as simple as it gets. 2 different modes, no specialty, no frills. But that's what I need in a simple EDC light. And especially for me, where it becomes a little bit of a backup. I can use this just when I go out if I want a low profile, maybe a night out to dinner. Just need that little bit of light with me. I'm not looking for anything really substantial, so that would work out just fine. On top of that, the two different colors, that's in the eye of the beholder. For me, hard to say. Sometimes I really like cool white, sometimes I like neutral. It just kind of depends. In this case, I happen to have both. I think for me, for the most part, I do tend to like cool light on the bigger lights. I do tend to like warmer light on the smaller lights. It just sort of depends on my typical viewing distance. Things that are beaming way off, big and bright, illuminate everything. I want that cool white to really make things look crisp. But when I'm up close and I just want to see some detail, maybe I want that warmer light. Again, it just really depends. In this particular case, for me, probably the warmer light, where I'm usually just going to use this to get me in the front door, help me get into the car, generally looking around, very simple tasks. But again, that's in the eye of the beholder, in your personal preference. And so again, the Thrunite Saber, thank you so much for following along. I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Thrunite who did provide this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor. Take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.